What's up, Nerd Squad? Welcome back to Top 10 Nerd. I'm your host, Johnny Rogers. If you happen to be new here, make sure you hit that subscribe button. That way you stay up to date with all things nerd. Plus, leave us a comment down below with which villain you want to see in Avengers Endgame. With that, let's get to today's list of the top 10 supervillains who are impossible to adapt into the MCU. In at number 10, Sugar Man. One of the ugliest villains, the Sugar Man is a low-key supervillain making appearances in the 1995 X-Men crossover Age of Apocalypse, and in the Marvel Universe as well. He's a murderer of mutants, humans, and financially motivated. His monstrous and deformed appearance just wouldn't look right on the big screen MCU films. Even with great CGI, his demonic body would be difficult to illustrate and may look pretty strange next to the human cast in an X-Men film. Number 9, the Impossible Man. First appearing in the pages of the Fantastic Four, this antagonistic alien is just unfilmable in nature. Despite Fantastic Four movie dreams being wiped out because Marvel no longer owns the rights, the often playful villain just hasn't been updated enough for our modern time. When he debuted in the 60s, he was a good fit next to his hero counterparts. However, picturing him in a modern Marvel movie just doesn't seem likely. Number 8, Orgo. This classic Marvel villain first hit the comic book pages of Strange Tales in 1961. Although temporarily, he successfully took over the world and has even been a member of the Howling Commandos and Stake, which was actually a division of S.H.I.E.L.D. The reason why his comic book run was so successful is purely on how dramatic and colorful the character appears on the pages. Slap that on a big screen and it probably wouldn't translate well. He's just too much of a monster that most people don't really remember. And at number 7, the Beyonder. In the popular 1984 crossover event known as Secret Wars, the Beyonder was the main antagonist. He's a mysterious out-of-this-world force that was originally believed to be the sum of the entire multiverse. His reality-altering powers makes it pretty hard to believe that he could hit the MCU as a large-scale villain. Even though the MCU has shown this watered-down Thanos character, he doesn't even hold a candle to this 1980s bad guy. Number 6, M.O.D.O.K. Also known as a mobile organism designed only for killing, this hard-to-look-at villain makes you feel okay about judging people based on their looks. He's one of those villains that looks as bad as what he does. M.O.D.O.K. is the OG of floating around and killing people as far back as 1967. Taking into consideration his disturbing appearance and unique character design, it's not a surprise that the MCU hasn't introduced him yet. To make that happen, it would take a ton of CGI work, and with the failure of other big-headed villains like Hector Hammond, it's probably best that he stays on the comic book pages. Number 5, Mojo. Making M.O.D.O.K. look like someone your parents would trust you to go on a date with, we have a member of an alien race known as the Spineless Ones. He is a longtime villain for the X-Men and rules over a dimension where the inhabitants are addicted to his gladiator-esque television broadcasts. Now imagine this science fiction villain up against Hugh Jackman's Wolverine. Put his origin aside, he's a huge, hideous horror film type character that would be difficult for the MCU to adapt. Not to mention, you'd also have to show off his big jelly body on top of his spider-like robotic legs. Up next to X-Men's big villains like Magneto and Apocalypse, this ugly monster whose personality is more like a TV executive just wouldn't hold up. Number 4, Onslaught. Leaning on one of the least realistic villains in the Marvel Universe, Onslaught would be like mixing the consciousness of Charles Xavier and Magneto. His power in the comic books was only matched by the combined efforts of the Avengers, X-Men, and the Fantastic Four. That group effort was able to take him down in his original 1996 crossover event. This big red and purple supervillain would be a tough sell to adapt into the MCU because of his physical stature and combination of two minds. On top of that, his costume is just impractical and hard to imagine into live action. Number 3, Death. Now, it's argued that Death isn't a supervillain, but considering her name is Death, this abstract entity of the Marvel Universe certainly isn't up to any good. Death has been part of some big storylines such as the death of Captain Marvel and Infinity Gauntlet. Death has attachments to many big Marvel characters. Most of them have a strange relationship with the Force. Even Thanos is obsessed with Death. Deadpool, however, avoids it altogether. To adapt the force of Death and mold it into a supervillain for the big screen would be just a little too much. It would be like if you actually got to see Batman and Titans. The point is that the force of death is always there without needing it to be there physically. Number 2, High Evolutionary. With his ever-changing personality, confusing principles, and seldom use, this villain is just too old school for the big screen. Using his godlike powers since 1966, the High Evolutionary has an obsession with changing the evolutionary process. This all makes him very unlikely to be battling it out with the Avengers and company. Considering the lighthearted vibes of most of the MCU films, this villain that raises questions of morality and messes with the evolutionary process makes for some heavy material. Plus, the character's backstory is extremely complicated. Combined with his motivations, it just wouldn't translate to the silver screen. Lastly, on our number 1 spot, Marvel Zombies. I know what you're thinking. There's no way we consider zombified versions of heroes to be villains, but you'd be wrong. They are most certainly villains in the comic books because, well, they literally eat people. This would make for a very entertaining cameo for the MCU to infect a few heroes with his zombie contagion, but it also wouldn't make any sense. Adding in zombies would certainly alienate their younger demographic in the audience by doing a live-action zombie version of their childhood heroes. Even if us older viewers would love it. And that has been the top 10 supervillains who are impossible to adapt into the MCU. Thank you for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, hit that thumbs up button, and if you happen to be new here, don't forget to subscribe before you leave. Plus, leave us a comment down below with your thoughts on our list. And if you want any more videos like this one, just click that playlist on your screen. From Top 10 Nerd, I'm Johnny Rogers, and until next time, take care.